Hey, you know what I think is really interesting? Did you know that in the middle of the Pentagon there's a Taco Bell? Isn't that weird? Like of all the places they don't need a Taco Bell. Anyways, welcome to Comic Book Wars episode 46. Nico's eating Taco Bell, so I muted him. I think that's interesting, but I also think it's interesting to know that like the Pentagon for some reason has a Taco Bell. I don't like they also have it's a Taco Bell KFC, but I just think that's weird. So that's something to think about. And
No,
also, you can't like it. It's not open
they're
to
owned
the
by the same company. Is there a Pizza Hut in there as well? Because it's all the same company. Yum Brands.
listen. The point is that's weird. Okay. Anyways, I'm Jimmy Linguini. Obviously, we're on episode 46. You guys can introduce yourselves. Nico didn't walk away, but whatever.
46. This is Sleepy John. No Wednesday Comics. I'll tell you who did it. That B. Carol Baskin took our comics.
And okay, why did he walk up? Why did he like? He knew we started it.
I think he had to finish his bean burrito.
Okay, well, anyways, we're also joined by.
Listen, I had to get shredded cheese. What happens is I order extra cheese in these little cups because they never give you enough cheese at Taco Bell.
Listen, didn't we talk about this last week about how we have really bad intros?
And nobody wants dippy cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, they do.
Not with their tacos. It's gross.
This podcast is already off to a great
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to tell you guys about my eBay transaction. I'm very confused. I need advice from the live audience and from the panel. But we'll get to that later.
You called me earlier about it, and I don't think you should bring that up, but that's fine. Let's go to the next. Where are we starting here? We got
so we obviously know the situation.
There was an additional development after we talked, right, John? John and I talked about it. We want your opinion. Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't know that we want.
Wait, about what? Are you guys talking about how it brews inside, and if you don't let it out fast, it dries up? So that's the thing. That brings me back to this thing, the flushable shower. Great idea.
Stop it. Let's talk about TKO Studios and our friends at Scout Comics.
Yeah, so we all know the situation we're in. It was announced last week that new comics would not be shipping from Diamond this week or in the foreseeable future. So a couple of the independent comics decided they were going to support our local comic shops. Black Mask, TKO Studios, and our friend James at Scout Comics all announced that they would be giving 50% of their proceeds to local comic shops when they ordered through their individual websites. I believe that's correct, right, Jimmy? That's how they're kind of phrasing it. I don't know. 50% of the proceeds.
That's the first I've heard of that. I just saw you guys were doing 50% off or something.
Yeah. So not 50% off. They're doing, if you order comics through their websites, they will give. At least what I read from TKO and Scout is they have a drop down when you order it to select what comic shop you want the proceeds to go to. So say you order a comic from Scout, good people there, they will send 50% of their profits, I believe is how it's worded, to your local comic shop. And the reason they're doing that is because that's what each comic shop would make anyway. That's their margins on selling the new comics, and they're trying to make sure each other is still making some type of money. So very cool of these independents to do that. I doubt the big three will do that, we'll say, but it's pretty awesome. On that note, Nico had, do we have a Nico time recap? I don't know if we got into that, but Nico did speak with James this past Saturday on Nico time.
Oh, James of Scout Comics.
Correct.
Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. We learned that my home's infested with a poltergeist. And we also were able to talk to him about his observations in light of his experience as a financial analyst. He's been a stockbroker for a few decades. Couple that with his position as an executive in charge of a major independent publisher, and it made for a really interesting discussion. He's always a wealth of information. We went through some of the books that he enjoys that Scout's publishing, and he at least gave me 2 titles that I haven't read that I'm going to go out and pick up. I'll probably be ordering those directly from Scout and sending proceeds to a comic shop.
When James was on, the first time I was introduced to James was on UD, and
Does
as
Jimmy
much
have a
as
porn stash?
yes, he does. We were just
Listen,
going to ignore
man,
that.
We have a
We were
comic
just gonna-
book about. We have a podcast about comic books, and you guys go off topic a lot.
And the one thing that Jimmy will not admit to was Jimmy and James Hake had a great rapport when they started talking about 90s comics and the stories and what they liked. And Jimmy won't admit this, but go back and listen to the UD podcast.
They're basically
you can see
besties.
it right there. They were.
Yeah.
And James is, he's more of a comic dude than me, I will admit. He knows the stories. He knows his 90s comics. He knows what he grew up with. And after listening to him talk, he also is like super excited about all the comics they make. And I understand he's trying to sell his product. And I don't know what comics, Nico, that you wanted to pick up, but I've had
Dude, that
Solar
guy
Flare
could
on
sell
my
me
list
anything.
for a while. Yeah. I've had Solar
I mean, he
Flare
could
on my
literally
list.
sell me anything. He's an incredible salesman. He'd be dangerous as a stockbroker. I'd be, unless he's good at it, I'd still give him all my money.
Right? Yeah, he's a good salesman.
Absolutely.
And the thing about being a good salesman is if you really believe somebody, not
You can
just
feel
that
that
they're
passion.
a salesman.
Yeah.
You know that they're excited about it because they really like it, not because
his
think,
excitement's
I
infectious.
can make money off of you. Yeah, it's that this is a good product and I like it. So
Yeah, no, I think it's great what all these independent publishers are doing, especially that they're doing this charity thing. I just think it sucks because there's definitely people who are going to be hurting, especially people who have to pay, I don't know, like $1,400 a month for Facebook groups or whatever. But who knows? What else we got going on this week?
So building off of that, are we going to talk about where Diamond ended up today?
Well, we didn't have it under our market watch,
interject?
but I definitely put it under the market watch because that's what I believe. I
Right.
believe this is a market watch thing. So earlier in the, and you didn't have this, so let me do this for a second, please.
Sure.
Earlier this week, Bleeding Cool reported that Steve Jeppy denies rumors that Penguin Random House are buying Diamond. Okay, so that came out. Today's the 31st, so this came out yesterday. And then today...
And Penguin Random House is a giant book publisher, correct,
Yeah.
Jimmy?
Yeah, they've been around forever. Penguin has at least since the 20s,
Well,
the 1920s.
Yeah, and Random House is like giant books. They're not into comics, obviously.
No, well, they might have some, but I think the other ones aside from this are Simon and Schuster, right? I think they're really at that same level. But anyway, so they're denying the rumors. But anyways, then news came out today that Diamond has no cash flow and that they're not going to pay any of their vendors.
Now, they did kind of state that, right? That the way they stated it was more like, well, because we are not selling comics this week, therefore we cannot charge comic shops, and we don't have the money to pay our vendors who have already sent us the product, more or less, in some instances.
Well, it says from it says the unfortunate truth is that we are no longer receiving consistent payments from our customers. This requires that at this time we hold payments to vendors previously scheduled to release this week. This is a difficult decision and not one we make lightly. So Diamond's pretty much saying they have no money to pay. So what do you?
I mean,
I
work for a small business. I know how cash flow works every day in terms of paying your vendors, paying your employees, doing your overhead, what that costs for overhead means is, and that's why you have a rate set, for professional services, what I'm in and Nico's in. Your professional service rate is derived from all those things combined. When I first saw that article from about Diamond not paying their vendors, only a week in, it told me that they are in a very cash poor position, or they are choosing to accept the fact that they're a monopoly and nobody has any other options.
Can I
So-
provide one other alternative?
Yeah, go for it.
They see this problem as not short term, but a long term problem, and they want their books to look right when they sell the fucking thing to Random House, right?
Can I give one
Yeah.
more?
Please.
Yeah,
What
go ahead.
if they're filing for bankruptcy protection just so they can get all these crazy tax credits? Because I think something that we're all forgetting is Steve Jeppy and the Jeppy company donated, I believe, $5 to $7 million to the Smithsonian last year. So there's absolutely no way that Diamond's going out of business and that they have no money. This has to be.
Did they donate cash or did they?
No,
donate
I
books?
believe it was. I believe it was things that they could have sold. And
Because
but things
didn't
that
he
he donated his
close-
entire museum, right? The whole
Yeah.
Jeppy museum, and gave it to
He had
them.
a
So
museum in Baltimore, correct? That he
yeah,
closed
things that he
down?
easily could have sold. And he also owns Hakey's, right? Or I think he has some
Hakes.
kind of whatever.
Does he?
I think so. He has something to do with them. But my point is, I think this is just a tax strategy and a way for him to maybe scam the government or draw the line, things like that. But I think they're fine.
Do you
just
think
based on where
if
they're
you
at.
go through, Jimmy, you know the history of how Diamond came to the top, and even with the owner as to his history, and it's very well published what the history of all that is. It was not always on the up and up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can kind of go back and look through all that, and we only know what we can read online. These are not. I never talked to the guy. I didn't know anything. I wasn't alive when a lot of this stuff was happening, as to when the EC was coming through and EC Comics and all that history around that, and how everybody rose to power and Diamond came in to be the only company out there. But it's very sordid. I mean,
Yeah, well,
not to make light of it, but it's kind of as to how Catholicism is the main religion in the world, because
the private wealth
there was wars fought over it
behind every fortune. Well, anyway, but the point is, the private wealth of the CEO of a corporation doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna. I mean, they're not gonna commingle their funds.
Yeah, but
right?
I mean, Diamond is owned by the Jeppy company, and it was the Jeppy company
Right.
that made the donation because it was of the Jeppy museum.
Well, now that's interesting.
So,
let me ask you this.
It's all corporations set up within each other.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this: is Diamond's profit in a year consistent, or does it have certain months where it makes a hell of a lot more? I mean, in other words, what's interesting about a lot of retailers is, cash flows kind of like supports the business through down months. They make no profit, and then some of them make a ton during con season.
it would be
right?
based on
Or
the book schedule
a lot of
when books
businesses
come out.
Christmas.
Yeah,
Right,
it's kind of out
so-
of Diamond's hands. I think it's based on, like Jimmy
When
said,
there's
it's
an
based on
X-Men one?
arcs. Yeah, it's based on arcs and when the comic companies decide they're going to strike, kind of.
I didn't look real hard at this. I mean, I hate to speculate about
Well, this week,
what's going on without having a lot of info.
Oh.
specifically is Batman 92, which was a huge week for Punchline Comic. And this would have been, the books will still be published. Batman 92 will be the #1 book this week, probably this month, because it was so heavily ordered, because it was well known about.
We had that Archer cover, the 1 in 25 variant cover.
Yeah. They did that FOC cutoff 1 in 25 cover. They moved the Archerm cover up. I bet Batman 92. What do you think, Jimmy? 250, 300,000?
Yeah, it's going to be up there. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what books were supposed to come out this week. I didn't really look into it once they announced that they were all canceled. But I mean, it's monumental. This is the first time in a year, like at least 10 years, that there haven't been new comic books released.
Yeah, I remember looking at it.
Even Christmas week, they and New Year's, they end up releasing something.
Yeah.
So this is the first time in a very long time there aren't new comics. So.
Well, Yeah, let's move on from. We could talk about this forever. Actually, could be a whole episode talking about Diamond.
Yeah, Nico. But yeah, we're on Market Watch. What
No,
else we got?
it's a good thing. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, Nico specifically, is what do you guys think the comic market is gonna look like when people start finally receiving some money from the U.S. government is providing some stimulus to everybody, whether whatever your employment situation is, they're gonna issue a stimulus check to keep the
I think I get
money
$8,000.
Canadian.
Yeah, I think I
Wow.
get $2,000 a month. I don't know. I have to look into it. It's really weird.
Yeah, and the U.S. is they have a baseline based on how much income you currently make, and it tiers down. It's also based on family and how many kids you have, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm in a number of online Facebook groups, and people are joking. It seems the money is still flowing in collectibles, I will say, to a point. It's not that, by this point, I think we are at the point where we said, well, we would, 2 weeks ago, we were going to say, we're not quite sure where the market will be right now.
Yeah.
The projections at the time were for U.S. at least like mid-May until things get back to normal, despite what you're hearing, and the bottom has certainly not dropped out by any means. I will say things have gone down, but what are you saying, Jimmy?
It's not a bad time to get a girl pregnant because I mean that's $500 per child, right? So.
Oh my God, what is wrong with this guy? Is that why you're growing that mustache out?
Yeah.
That's why he's got the mustache.
Yeah, I
Okay.
want that $500 stimulus money. No,
I found out about John's wife. I found out
okay.
details. We'll discuss them privately.
What do you mean?
What?
What do you mean? We'll discuss
The proposal at the ball field.
The proposal at the ball field.
Oh God!
Yeah,
this is
fiance, whatever you want to call it.
That was like 2
This
weeks
is
ago when he was
ridiculous.
at the ball field.
No, that was over.
Is that what he's spending his stimulus check on?
Luckily, I got my trip in so that I wasn't affected. I got in right before. What is going on here? I don't know what is going on here.
Train wreck.
All I got to say to change subject is, Nico, I'm glad your internet service is better this week because TJ Timebomb said he was going to do a shot every time your internet cut out, which he could be dead by now, depending on what week it was.
That was it for Market Watch, apparently. Oh no, we got one more
Nico,
thing. For
what
Market
did you want to
Watch.
say about the stimulus check, Nico? I know you had something.
Well, I mean, my observations from looking at live auction results, and Comic Link is going to tell the tale tonight. There's a ton of live auctions that are ending on Comic Link. But here's kind of my sort of observation about a lot of this stuff. It appears that Golden Age books are, with a few exceptions, pretty much unscathed. Silver Age, Bronze Age, Copper Age kind of took about a 20% hit. And hot books of the week are same as they ever
they don't exist. Really?
Hot trash.
Like, I was gonna say, what's the hot book this week? Because it's everything. Movies shut down. There's no comics coming out.
You know what I mean? Like just your random, like, oh my God, look at this book. It's like, oh, well, they're still there.
I randomly was looking some books up for different reasons this week, and a couple variants just popped up that it came up in my feed because I was looking at another book, going through eBay sales, and I was like, why? These books are selling like crazy. These books don't normally sell for this much.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
I think people that do have the extra cash to spend, they are buying stuff, but I don't think it's at a discount. I think they're thinking, I got to buy now because stuff is down, but it's not really.
Yeah, all of those con buyers are going straight to eBay.
Well, you know what? That's a good point.
And a lot of people are just stuck at their house, so the random, like, I'll take it. Those impulse buys are there.
we always look at eBay for sold prices, and we never talk about all the transactions that happen at cons all across the country, across the world. You're right. Hey, the stuff you never see.
So
Okay.
it's interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated with where we're at and where we're going.
I think next week we'll touch on that again and see where things are at, see where we're at with pricing. So, did anybody realize that The Walking Dead was
Is it
on?
still a television show?
I thought it was off. I didn't know new episodes were still airing.
I asked last week, or this was 2 weeks ago, I think. There was an episode on, which I think was the first of the new season or half season, whatever. And I asked people, hey, did you know Walking Dead was back on? They said no. Now, Walking Dead is still doing well in terms of viewership through sustained seasons. They're still way up in viewers. It's natural for people to stop watching over time. But last week, the princess appeared, and I remembered, I'm sure you guys remember this book came out because it wasn't that long ago. Walking Dead, what is it, 160, 171? Yeah. I mean, the cover looks like the character. It's, straight there. I think surprisingly, it's selling for $10 shipped. Today it might not be. I probably, the day that the episode aired or the day after it was. But I remember when this book came out, people were, posting it like crazy in terms of pre-sales. I should have looked up what the Comic-Con numbers on it were.
Well, there's also a
I bet
Mega
it
Box
was up
variant,
there.
right? Like a sketch variant.
Was there one for this?
I believe so, yeah.
I don't recall. Yeah, I remember this one. There was a one a couple before. But we'll see. We know where Walking Dead's going. We'll see how things go. Just interesting to point out.
It's time for Nico time.
I've got notes. Look at this. Look at this. Huh?
Young boys just want a puppy, but apparently you got a unicorn instead.
He looked at unicorn in the face,
nice.
And the unicorn saw a man.
That's very nice. All right. Woo! Who's excited? Human Torch number 8. It's a super cool cover, one of my favorites because it's got Submariner on it, and there's a Hitler appearance. For those people that are Hitler hunters, there's a total of 77 universal copies on the census. There is, in fact, a 9/8 blue label. Who'd have guessed?
That makes no sense.
I can't make this shit up. All right. You ready for this one?
Okay.
In 2020, in March of 2020, an incomplete copy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same month. That's this month, beginning of the month. Sold for... Oh, I'm sorry. My printer screwed that one up. I apologize.
Jesus Christ.
Well, don't hate me, Jimmy. Don't hate me. Okay. A 3.5 in February sold for just about the same price, $13.75. Now, in 2 years ago, an incomplete 3.0 sold for $1,000. So we're seeing very little appreciation in spite of the Submariner appearance, in spite of the Hitler appearance. Market has sustained the price over time, but not a big uptick. I like Jimmy with his Jesus Christ. Thanks, Jimmy. You're doing great. All right. This one's a big one, though.
This one surprised
Talk to me,
I
John.
will say.
Yeah, talk to me. You already know the tale.
So I saw you had this on the list, and I said, okay, let's see how the market is really doing. This is a good test of the market, I feel, because the past 2-3 years, this book has seen a ridiculous rise. And who didn't want one of these books, even though the character is really not anything substantial to DC Comics? First Swamp Thing, House of Secrets 92. This cover is really popping. Usually when you see this book, the cover is a little faded. I assume just because the colors, the ink doesn't hold up well. And also, we know DC books for a long time were less sought after than Marvel Not this book is pretty hard to find comparatively to Marvel books of the same age. So this 9.4 sold for what, Nico? You got the price on it?
$5,003.
$5,000. It's a 9.4, which is pretty ridiculous for a book, for this book, because as I said, it's usually lower grade, not as good a color. So I figured this was a good test. I went and looked at the GPA myself. The all-time high for this book was in 2018, which is in that window we talked about when people started really going crazy for it. Also recall 2018 was probably around the time when it was around the time when they announced that they were doing the TV show for it, which eventually aired in 2019 and was subsequently cut short. Since the 2018 high, this price right here has a 40% drop from that high. I believe the high was around 89. This is what, 40, 48 or something like that. I think the all-time was 8,900, something like that.
Long story
But what did this
short-
book sell for? 47, 4,800?
Oh, I thought it was 5,003.
Okay. Could be, yeah.
But I might have the wrong sale. There was another sale in March of this year for $5,003. Point is, that is those sales are pretty much on board for this time of year. No massive decrease in sale price. However, if you look at the long-term trajectory, as John indicated, down like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, which really surprised me because this book, I just remember being so hot and everybody.
How many copies do you think are on the census?
I didn't look.
What do you think?
No clue.
Just take a guess.
Like total graded.
Total graded, blue label.
400.
2,000.
Yeah, I guess 400 would be kind of low. That's kind of a dumb guess. 2,000. That was way more than I would have thought, though.
Way more than I would have thought too.
Yeah.
All right.
Mainly because this book I feel is traded and sold raw at conventions a lot. It's not a online book where people are seeking it out, but I could be wrong.
Next. All right, I put 2 FF books on here. There's a 9-2 and a Jimmy.
What does that mean?
I was trying to get him to go to the next one too.
Oh.
Well, he only put one fucking copy of the book on it.
I did see you had the other one on there.
Yeah, it's okay. Good job, Jimmy. We'll just talk about the 9-2.
No, you only sent me one, you crybaby. You're crybaby.
Nope,
You guys are crybabies.
Nope. Definitely
Well,
didn't.
you could have always checked it. Like, I mean, it's not like you couldn't have.
I don't know how to turn on the outline. Nevertheless,
I don't know how to turn on
$5,900.
the outline. That's something.
Yeah.
That I just want everybody to
Nevertheless,
remember
the
that.
first coming of Galactus. 9-2.
Yeah, it's a fucking cool cover, right? Everybody's
It's okay.
familiar with the
I'm not a
book.
big fan of the Watcher.
Everybody's a fan of the book. Let's talk price
Talk
tags.
about Silver Surfer. Okay.
Well, now here's the question: do you think this is a good buy in this grade at a 9.2?
And the price was
5,000 and change.
Boy, it honestly for me, it's a book I've lost track of because I know it skyrocketed last year when Marvel got hold of Fox, and I really don't. I wouldn't if I would have had it before. Yes, I was lucky to get a couple of them before, but not this one. So
Yeah. So there's a $5,900 sale also this month.
okay.
Okay. Basically, the long and the short of it is we're seeing the price on this particular book relatively on point. No real
I would think
decline
it's kind of flat. Yeah,
whatsoever.
I could see that because
Now we've
I don't
talked
think-
about. Yeah, we've talked about
That
it.
would go down.
Yeah, we've talked about this issue. There's a ton of high grade copies of 48 because of a warehouse find. Not the same for 49. So if you're going to shell out huge money for one of these high grade copies, be cognizant of that.
Okay.
Jimmy?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad price, honestly, for a 9.2, but
Yeah, it's not.
I wouldn't personally buy it, but
Oopsie, I dropped all my notes. Oh, now this one's a down book. Down book. This was a score.
But let's talk about
the
this
buyer.
cover. There's
Yeah.
a chick sitting on her couch, and there's a dude in his N95 mask coming through the window. Oh, sorry, that's not correct. Very topical. There was
the gas mask cover.
Yeah,
the Sandman
gas
mask
coming through. Yeah,
yeah. So it's a super duper iconic cover. There are very few sales. There was one sale in 2019. Okay.
Mhm.
Where a 1.5 sold for $300.
Okay.
A 3.5 sold for $900 in November of 2018.
Wow.
A 4.0
Okay.
sold for $1,000 in 2018.
Whoa. Okay. Now we're talking like some big money for not a high grade book.
Yeah. It's a super cool book. Hard to find one that there are very few on the census. How many copies do you think are on the census total?
25.
16.
Okay. I was closer on that one.
None restored.
Okay.
Next. Yeah, truly, I think it's a truly rare book. I like it a lot.
It's a weird one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of weird.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the number 8. I don't want to screw that part up. Weird Tales of the Future, number 8.
Yeah.
Okay. 42 total copies on the census, 2 copies that are restored. This 4.0 was $1,602.
Okay.
Okay. The only other sale in 2020 was a 3.0 for $1,000. In September of 2019, a 2.5 sold for $1,100. No other real pricing data. Super rare book, highly coveted. I think this was a steal.
What'd that sell for?
$1,600.
Yeah, that was definitely a good price.
Next one.
I think the next one is the one that it's not this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
they banged them.
Tell me about this one.
Yeah. Okay. Weird Tales of the Future, number 5. 38 total copies on the census. Again, 2 that are restored for a total of 40, I guess, if you include the restored ones. This 5.0 sale for $2,252 made waves. Somebody stole a 4.0 for $500 in 2019. December of 2019.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this cover.
Huge result for this book. I mean, record-setting result.
Yeah.
It's literally the second highest recorded sale of this book. I'm sorry. There were a couple back in 2011 that beat it. That are like 7.5s. One was a pedigree, but I mean, just an astronomical number. Not a book that comes up often. And some real aggressive bidding on this golden age monster. You don't like the cover?
No, I'm not a big fan of the monster or alien, whatever it's got there.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Hmm.
All right, last one.
This one is
personal
one I like
favorite,
more, and it's because of you that I like this cover, and it's also because of the scan that they must have had CGC scan this because I looked at this picture, the colors on this thing are amazing,
dude. If I would have known it was going to go this cheap, I'd have bid on it. I dropped the ball in a major way. This is the book I wrote about trying to buy. Yeah. And then then people
started selling it. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I didn't. a big number theoretically for the book. There's one other recorded sale in 2020 in February. A 2.5 sold for $350.
Jeez,
No,
that seems
yeah,
low. Yeah.
yeah. Well, no other sales data really at all that's kind of like relevant. I think whoever got this one legitimately did a hell of a job. There's 39 copies on the census. Some people prefer the 15. I like the 16. It's one of maybe my favorite zombie cover of them all. Congratulations to the buyer. So, big books, Golden Age books, stand strong. That's my report.
That was a great report. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that.
We've now moved on to what do we call this one?
We just call it GPA Watch is what we call it.
GPA Watch.
Bret Hart wears a man bra.
Oh,
which is Bret Hart wears a man bra watch. It's funny. We received a message that one of the books we reported was not accurate in terms of the sale price, and I had read some other comments about sale prices being reported, and it kind of sucks because eBay has instituted if you're a seller on eBay, you know that they've instituted an option where you can send offers to people who are watching your listed comic. Problem is if somebody accepts that offer, the price gets recorded as the full price that you had asking, and none of the websites that are able to track best offers are able to capture the actual sold price. So one thing I do want to say about this, that we use GPA. I have a subscription to GPA. Sometimes the prices they have on there aren't even accurate as to what it's sold, because eBay has taken as much as they can away from the market in terms of reporting true facts. So just take it with a grain of salt, as usual, everything that we do here.
Hey, would this be a good time to talk about my eBay issue?
No, we'll talk about that at the very end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'll be a good extra fodder. So
okay.
The first one I want to talk about is one that surprised me, and there's no real good reason for it. Hulk number 16 from the first Red Hulk series, the Ed McGuiness 1 in 15 variant, sold for $500, which was an all-time high. The last sale was for $450 last year, which is pretty high and I assume that was during the time when Red She-Hulk was getting rumored for some things. But check this out. There was a sale in 2018, I believe. I think I have my notes mixed up here, for $89. Maybe I have them mixed up. My notes say 2019 for $89, but something was off there. So at any rate, $500 for this book seems ridiculous. There's 54 in the census. And the one thing I want to talk about through these books here is the census numbers. So the next one we're going to talk about is the Spider-Man Platinum number 1. The story on this is well known, that it was sent out to retailers in a manila envelope, not through regular distribution means, and got pretty beat up for most copies during that transaction from Marvel or whoever sent it out to the comic book shops. They sent it with a letter, and most of them didn't fare well. So a 9.8 does pretty well when they come up. This one sold for $1,250. The all-time high was $2,000 in 2008. Now, there was one last year that got pretty close to that. I assume it was kind of because Spider-Man number 1 was coming back. McFarlane was doing his big signing with CGC, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing I want to note, as I just told you a little bit about the history of it, there are 169 9.8s on the census, which seems like a pretty decent amount. Now, Spider-Man number 1 was one of the biggest comics ever printed, but the platinum numbers are a little bit unknown. They were probably given one per shop, which we're not sure how many were printed at that time. But the one thing we do know is there, on the CGC census specifically, there are 1,642 comics that have been graded. Now, some of those could have been cracked and reslabbed, but the number of 9.8 compared to the total number is only 10%, which is very low. So the next book that we want to talk about is Darkhawk #1. Now, I'm going to talk about this one for two different reasons. So the recent sale was $375, which is an all-time high. First thing we'll talk about, the number on the census, 577 9.8s, which is 41% of the total graded. The last book we talked about was only 10%. This one is 40%. Still not really that ridiculous, honestly. But the one thing that I talked about at the beginning, when we look at GPA numbers, this book sold for the price that it did because it is a newsstand. Now, because the price is not differentiated between the newsstand and the direct edition, CGC does not differentiate it on the label. So what this does is set a precedent.
You mean
that
the
is
price on the
unrealistic.
comic?
Correct. I'm sorry. Whatever I said. Yes, you're correct. The newsstand price and the direct edition price are the same. CGC will differentiate it on the label and in the census when the prices differ. So this sets an unrealistic price in GPA. If you just go in and look at it, you see a price of $375 and you go, wow, I can sell my direct edition for $375. That's not the case. And there's no way to know that without having something like this where somebody points it out. So as I said at the beginning, you always take GPA with a grain of salt when you're going and looking at prices. The last book I want to talk about, again, is a reflection on the census numbers and, how many are out there, which is, if we can go to the next one, is Maximum Carnage, the one-shot. This book, I think we've talked about a couple times, was distributed with the video game when it came out of the same name and the same imagery. It was Super NES and Genesis released games, and the comic came with it in certain circumstances. It was Marvel and Acclaim. Acclaim was a video game maker. One just sold for $4,500, all-time high, easy. Now, what's crazy about it is there was another sale this year of $3,500. The only previous other 9.8 sale on GPA was $250 in 2008. Now, remember, the one thing we talk about with GPA is they only track CGC sales. So there could be CBCS comics graded and sold, et cetera, et cetera. But look at the census number on this CGC. There's only 4, and it's only 6% of the total graded of this comic, which is ridiculous. So all these comics, I think, hopefully took away from is that when we talk about all these graded comics and the prices they sell for, really look at those census numbers is the derivative of why they sell for what they sell. And also, can't always trust the GPA price.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, that was well said, man. I guess that brings us on to our rumor mill. You ready for rumor mill?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we start with Morbius, apparently. What's going on with Morbius?
So Morbius was announced that it was pushed back from July of this year until March of 2021, which is a huge setback, I believe. What do you guys think? I mean, does that seem a little too long? Or obviously they're setting this up for the box office, but...
Well, it certainly tells the tale of what the smartest money men, arguably on the planet, think about the projections for a population being willing to crowd together in theaters. That
is true. And the thing on that is China opened a few theaters a couple weeks ago. China's correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy may even know this. I believe they're the biggest box office in the world compared to
Yeah,
the
but then
U.S.
didn't they close them again? Like,
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago they opened like 300 of their movie theaters, and they announced last week, I believe, that they were closing them again because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They thought they were past it. They were mistaken, apparently, and they closed it again. So I think they're going to be the test of when movies are good again to go to. They're a little bit ahead of us in terms of when their major outbreak was. Not that they're dealing with it any better, but they'll be the test, I think. So I think you're right, Nico. Like Sony's pretty big, internationally. They're very big. So they're saying this is probably not good until next year in terms of we know this is going to make some money, so let's put it out next year. This year is probably not good. So yeah, the next thing up is a couple of recent Netflix announcements. Lock and Key got re-upped for a second season, which I think we're all excited about. Did you guys watch the whole first season?
I didn't watch any of it.
I watched it.
Did you read the comics, Jimmy?
I
feel
did.
Like that would have been
No.
a comic.
I read all the comics and I watched it.
You don't like Joe Hill, do you, Jimmy?
No.
Yeah.
I recently watched
Here we go.
Children of the Corn for the first
he
time.
wasn't
I
gonna
had
say
never
that.
seen it. I had
He
never seen
wasn't
it
gonna-
before.
Really?
But yeah, like I've seen parodies of it. But yeah, like Stephen King has some good adaptations, but I really I think once he kind of stopped, once I gave up on his stuff,
You gave up on the rest of it?
agree with his,
Joe Hill
stuff.
separated himself, though. He went with a whole different name and everything.
Yeah, no, they're the same person though, so that's why I just
They do look
I've
exactly
never
the
I've never really read any of the stuff.
And he was in Joe Hill was in Lock and Key. He was like he was like a paramedic in an ambulance in one scene. And it's funny. He's a terrible actor, obviously.
Children of the Corn, by the way, great movie.
Oh my God, that whole series
But,
is creepy. I remember you're a little bit younger than me, obviously. I grew up and I remember watching that. I'd go to the video store and get that, and man, that whole series was really creepy because it was just like a little bit too. Maybe this could happen.
Maybe if there was no internet.
It was a little bit. Oh man.
Yeah, listen, you've never been to southeastern Ohio, southwestern Pennsylvania.
Listen.
I used to
We
watch
could keep talking about the Children of the Corn, but we do have other stuff we could talk about. We could save this towards the end, unfortunately.
All right.
It's my fault, I know.
The Netflix also released that they canceled V-Wars and October Faction. Which
They didn't. I don't think they were canceled. They just weren't renewed.
They weren't re-upped for season 2. Well,
They should
cancel
season 1 of both of those shows from their fucking database. They were
in my opinion, is when you're in production and then you just stop. But
the way they released it though was that they were canceled. At least that's what the news stories I read. I think.
Oh.
You correct me if I'm wrong. You have like an indefinite contract unless you get canceled, I guess. Right?
I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know how that works.
Major disappointment.
You're making sense. Okay, I guess they
October
were
Faction I thought was decent. V-Wars I did not watch, which V-Wars was a disappointment in terms of the actor they had cast. It does look like him, doesn't it?
They were fucking horrific.
It's that guy that was on the other vampire show.
I watched 5 minutes of it and gave up on it. So.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I mean, it's no Tiger
King. The thing that I'm upset about is
you are the Tiger King.
Both these were by good comic book writers, and does that mean that they're screwed for future stories? Because
like just low budget, low production value. You know what I mean?
Isn't poor translation the same writer as Harrow County? And V-Wars is a popular horror comic writer.
October Faction was Steve Niles, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. You're right.
And then Harrow County is
Colin Bunn.
Yeah, I was gonna say Colin Bunn. And then V-Wars is Joe Hill.
No, it's not Joe Hill.
Oh,
it might be. No, it's not Steve Niles. I can't remember.
It's IDW. It's IDW,
Yeah.
which means it's nobody that you really care
Steve
about. 'Cause
Niles
nobody you
does
care
some
about
great,
whatever writes
some
for
great
IDW.
comics.
Yeah,
there. Steve Niles.
He
is a
does.
good
October
comic writer.
Faction, the comics were great, but show is like, anyway.
All right. So what do we got next? We have some more.
We have rumor mill. So there's some rumors that.
One thing I want to touch on, we talked about it last week, and we didn't have the graphics for it, was Man Wolf and Solo were both rumored to have movies coming from Sony, as well as one other unannounced comic.
Yeah.
So we have first Man Wolf comic. I just wanted to throw some graphics up here. I know we talked about it. First Man Wolf, and then if you want to kind of branch out from his first appearance, the only other ones are like Creatures on the Loose 30, which is also the first appearance of the guy from the Morbius movie. Help me out, Jimmy. The doctor.
The detective?
Oh. Yeah. And then he does have this other Ravencroft 1 in 50 Ryan Brown variant, which came out real recently, which is pretty nice. But there's not much else you can do with Man Wolf other than his first appearance. The other one's Solo, Web of Spider-Man 19. Mentioned the other couple books he had last week, which was the Solo series from 1994, which is a 4-issue series. And then Rob Liefeld did a couple. I didn't realize these were. Oh no, the one's just backwards. I was gonna say, I thought, were they like reverse? That's funny. There's a 1 in 50 and a 1 in 100 that recently came out a couple years ago from Liefeld. I actually like the cover, but the 1 in 100 I did buy because they were real cheap. So, yeah, and there's Werewolf. So the last thing that I wanted to touch on, you guys, we'll talk a little bit later, but it was because we didn't have new comics this week. I'd put some of this stuff off to talk about some Star Wars stuff, and I'm gonna say straight out of the gate, I don't know Star Wars stuff. I talked to some of my friends, and they fill me in, and I read stuff online, but man, if you go into Star Wars, there are so many people that are more knowledgeable than any comic book person. Star Wars is a brand that is worldwide, and it is more than comics. It's more than movies. It's novels. It's magazines. It's this and that. It's everything.
A bottomless pit of toys and fucking shit.
Yeah, it's toys. You're right. Toys are huge. When you talk about Star Wars, it's not all about comics. So, when these new characters pop up, us comic book people want to know what's their comic stuff, but it doesn't really translate well into comics. Some of these characters pop up and do well. We talked last week about this rumor that has yet to be formally confirmed about Ahsoka Tano. This week, it came out that Michael Biehn was playing a character. We all know him from Terminator, right, Jimmy? I mean, look at that scene. We all know Michael Biehn from Terminator, even though that was 40 years ago.
First of all, number one, Terminator 1 is the worst one of all of them.
Wow. Definitely not.
You can't tell
me.
You've
never been more wrong.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
Judgment
T2
Day
is one of
the best movies of all time. But
he's not in Judgment Day. But number one is not that great. And also, Universal Soldier isn't that good either. I don't know if you need to hear that, but Universal Soldier is a ripoff of Terminator, and it's not that good.
Stupid. Who cares? Terminator 1's the tits.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Terminator 1 was pretty badass. So he was announced to be playing a character, and then this is his artwork for the character he's playing, which is, to my knowledge, a limited Star Wars knowledge, not a existing Star Wars character. So, that was put out, and it's just like, oh, cool.
I wonder who that is.
But I don't know that there's any type of comic relation. So what I wanted to dip into last week was more tie-ins to Ahsoka Tano possibly being in Mandalorian, and some talks that I had with people like the Enforcer, our Star Wars knowledgeist on the podcast. When I first sent him the thing about Ahsoka Tano, he said, well, shit, then Sabine Wren's got to be in it too. And I said, what? Okay. I was going to take your word for it. And he said, no, man, here's what the deal is. And he explained it all to me. So.
Were you explaining it to us?
No, because
God damn it.
you have to watch Clone Wars to really know all this, and a lot of these side characters have only appeared in animated movies. Like Sabine Wren has been animated in Clone Wars and Rebels, but
What's her book?
okay, good question, Nico.
Thanks.
So she doesn't really have like great
Ugh.
comic appearances, but her early appearance would be Star Wars Rebels magazine.
Meh.
Let me get my notes out right here. So Star Wars Rebels magazine #1, which came out in May of 2016. And then I really like this cover of Star Wars Insider magazine 168, which came out in September of 2016. I think those are both good comics to get in terms of, or they're not even comics, they're magazines. So these are not comic books. You can see her on the front there of Star Wars Rebels Insider on the left. She's the one with the helmet on. The Star Wars Rebels magazine does have comics inside it. So it's not a true like Marvel comic, but it is a
Will
comic
CGC
book.
grade it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's magazine size. I'll grade that.
Sweet. All right.
These are both the same size, I believe. They just
How much does that run? Or can you just like not find it?
So you can't find these freaking magazines online, which was my issue last week when I was talking about Ahsoka Tano covers on the Star Wars Insiders. You can't find them. You just have to go to a shop and hopefully somebody had bought these and turned them in. So Sabine Wren does appear in Marvel Comics. They did bring her along. And
oh fuck this nightmare with this stupid shit. I've avoided learning anything about this.
Our good friend Peter Rena, who was on Nico Time, the image on the left is Peter's imagery. He posted a article about Star Wars canon #1,
the great debate that no one cares about.
She is seen there in the imagery, and then some stuff came out last week about #6. She's on the cover. Great, yeah. It's kind of like you said, Nico. It's the exact same thing as a lot of Star Wars characters, like Boba Fett. One of the most popular characters, but there's no good comic appearances. There's some covers that people say this and that, and you want to debate between magazines and novels, et cetera, et cetera. Sabine Wren, if it was me, I'd go for canon #1. I think that's a clear appearance of her. It's not named, whatever. So there's
like
that.
2 cameos.
She might be a #6. I didn't actually read it. I have no interest in reading that.
Yeah, next. Thanks.
The other thing that came out this past week was Captain Rex maybe appearing in The Mandalorian. And this
the
is
bald guy?
Yeah, bald guy. Well, So on the left is Captain Rex, on the right's Ahsoka Tano. So this is from Clone Wars, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm not a big Star Wars aficionado. I'm trying to be the Star Wars guy here on the podcast.
Dude, listen,
it's from Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a buddy of mine that I talk to. I'm a little hipper to what's going on in the comic market than him, but he's like a big deal retailer. And fuck off, Jimmy. And when he tells me like Star Wars comics are selling, like I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, because nobody knows. The problem is it's such a twisted history of Star Wars because things went from Marvel to Dark Horse to back to Marvel, and then you have all these magazines and novels in between. And so what do you want to do for first appearance in terms of we are the comic book people, like I explained. There's toys, there's magazines, there's this and that. There's tons of stuff out there that different people are going to gravitate towards different things. So the next slide shows that Comic Book Resources did an article based on a tweet from somebody saying, "Hey, did you guys see this thing about Dave Filoni posted on his Twitter?" So Dave Filoni is one of the comic book one of the Star Wars gods in terms of creators and content currently, and he changed his Twitter image handle to this imagery of Rex, and I believe it's Ahsoka. He made this imagery in 2015, and Comic Book Resources made an article about, oh, does this mean Captain Rex is coming to Mandalorian? And then, like I said, you get all these Star Wars people that know this shit, and they say, dude, you know that's been around since 2015. Like, he's
like
had this
our
on
friend with the Joe Exotic thing. He's been having it for what,
exactly.
since 2015.
It's like, is this the first time you heard of Joe Exotic when it comes on Netflix? Bro, I'm way above you. Like, I'm way ahead of you. So
yeah,
I don't think it means anything. I think he was bored on Twitter. He posts like once every 3 months on Twitter. So it in my opinion, it means nothing. But what do I know? So Captain Rex. The problem is, cat's out of the bag, and you can't do a retraction on it now. Our buddy Topher pointed out this comic, Star Wars Insider Magazine number 95. It does have a very random cloaked version of Ahsoka Tano, but on the cover, Captain Rex is on the right side there in his helmet. So this will be kind of his first appearance. And then his real true first comic appearance is also Star Wars Clone Wars number 1. He's right there next to Ahsoka Tano. If you want to deep dive on some of his other stuff, I like a couple of these Star Wars magazines. Insider number 120 and 133. I mean, they're both pretty cool covers. 2010 and 2012 respectively. So the last thing I'll say about him is Marvel is kind of bringing him into the fold. They're releasing a comic in April called Star Wars Clone Wars Battle Tales, which he will be a major part of. It's kind of, it's
they
obviously
were
based,
going to release it in April.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows when it'll come out now, but yes, it was scheduled to be released soon. My last comment on Star Wars shit. I came across this one, and I cannot verify the validity of the date that it was released. This is a Mad comic, Mad Special number 20. Now, this is a German comic. So you can see there at the bottom, it says Clone Wars. So they were doing a farce on Clone Wars. It features a lot of the characters on the front, including Ahsoka Tano. It's listed as being released before any of the Star Wars magazines or the Dark Horse magazine. I don't know if it is or not, but just throwing it out there as something I've seen online, and I cannot verify in any means. Like, I can't even find this book on eBay or anything, so can't say when it came out.
Call Matt Roybal.
Yeah, good point. Get those safaris on it.
Dude, man's got skills.
So, Nico, what else did you want to talk about? Your eBay problems with selling comics.
Yeah. So, I struggle to sell comic books online, as we've discussed in the past. I fail to put books up and sell them. They sit in boxes. I end up basically giving them away at shows. Occasionally, I will just throw books up in no reserve auction. So I did that, and I sold one, and it was a good price. And then that dude was like, "Hey, can I pay you on Wednesday?" And I was like, "Cool." And then today he sent me this message that was like, "Sorry, can't pay for it. I had X, Y, and Z happen. Sat down with the family. They thought it was an unwise investment in light of my money thing. I don't know.
Based on current world situations, which is not a new thing.
Right. So I was like, oh, all right. That sucks. So I asked you guys, well, what do you do? Do I just throw this back up or whatever? And you're like, no, make a second chance offer or something to the next person. So I did. And he tried to like lowball me. And I was like, yeah, no. And then I went to the third guy. And
I would do that too.
yeah. And the third guy was like, I'll pay you and I'll pay you now. And I was like, all right. Told the second guy to fuck off. Took the cash from the third guy. After we did the transaction, I had to like relist the book as a buy it now, blah, blah, blah. So he could do it, or because they took him off of the second chance thing. I don't really understand any of that. But after the transaction's over, he's like, oh, I need you to mail this to me at a different address because I'm being quarantined. And I was like, I can't do that. He's like, well, I'd have to quarantine if I left. I'm working in this other state and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I don't know. So I sent an email to eBay because they don't have telephone service. Now, this is not like a $20 book. This is not a $1,000 book. This is a big sale. Not that a $1,000 sale isn't a big sale, but like it's a big sale. So I'm waiting for eBay to hear back from me. But my understanding is that I don't have any sort of like seller protection, that if he files a claim and says, oh, I didn't get the book, they give him the money and he keeps the book he got from me, right?
Yeah. Wait, you're not actually thinking about shipping it, are you?
Don't ship it to a different address.
But I sent eBay a message like, hey, can I ship?
Gosh.
Well, Jimmy,
last week before we started, you told me you were very smart and that you're smarter than me. I just wanted to remind you of that because what you're saying right now is very dumb.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Explain why.
Are
you kidding me? Explain why. It's like,
for people who are watching,
everybody watching understands that you're being an idiot, man. Like the fact that you're even thinking about it shows that you're really dumb.
You have no recourse if you ship a book to a different address. You're taking that liability on yourself because what PayPal says is, yes, you're approved to send it to this address. If you don't send it to that address, they're going to say, well, how do I know you're not just scamming us?
So should I just send should I just send this?
You could work an inside system saying like, hey, I bought this book and then I sent it to this weird address. Can you refund it because it didn't get there? No, you don't want that. It's like a very easy scam system to figure out. I mean, yeah, I would not send it to a non-confirmed address.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I want to say about TJ Timebomb might be onto something with Star Wars spec. I gotta hold a few things back for next week because we're not gonna have new comics to talk about. So much to Nico and Jimmy's chagrin, I'm gonna talk about some other Star Wars comics next week.
That's cool. Star Wars is cool, kind of. Not really.
Not really. Not in terms of comics, it's not, but it is a hot property now because they're the only ones really doing things.
I prefer the Star Wars Cantina,
And I'm going to talk about some other books that there's nothing confirmed for. So we'll have fun with that.
Well, yeah, I'm not.
Are you the dude playing the nose xylophone?
No, he has. Well, maybe.
Yeah, it was his nose. It was his nose.
There's I'm seeing press some stuff we could talk about, I guess. I've sent some emails out.
Oh, okay. And what are you thinking?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that's all we had though to talk about. Am I wrong?
Yeah. My buyer was going to watch the podcast, so
he knew that you were legit.
Your buyer was going to watch the podcast. I'm not saying you shouldn't advertise the podcast. It just seems like you advertised it to the wrong people. Like it's gotten you kicked out of comic book stores. Now some buyer isn't going to buy some book off of you, and you're going to blame the podcast.
Bad idea.
Well, yeah, we all said that he sounds like a scammer.
Yeah.
Just like I got an email from like a correction from last week, and the guy said that he watches every week religiously. So
Yeah,
that's
he
why I didn't
liked
want to.
me.
That's why I didn't
The
want to
guy
bring
that sent
him
the
up
thing.
in his
Note
tax
that he
mania.
sent shit to me, not to you, because he was like, "Oh, Nico, he's
Yeah,
the
no,
reasonable one,
no,
the thoughtful voice
no,
of reason."
no.
I don't think the
He's a
email last
scam
week.
artist who somehow has like free tax.
Not
Like
very nice
it's
to
like he
say
has
that about
charity
someone.
status, and it's well. If you
No,
don't have to
that
pay
they
eBay
did
fees
not say
because you
anything
somehow
about.
figured out a fake charity thing, like
They didn't
I know I
say
should be impressed,
anything
but I'm not.
about watching every week. I think
It does.
somebody
It
who
says that.
watched.
I don't
You
think
didn't
that
read.
you
You didn't
should
read the
say
email.
these salacious things about our loyal and beloved watchers, talker people.
Listen, he sent me an email and it was addressed
They
to
like
you,
it.
so I'm pretty sure I
Yeah.
can say whatever I want.
Yeah, well, he likes me. He thinks he's like, oh, that
It said,
Nico
"Dear
guy,
Nico
he's
and other
insightful.
guys,"
Gosh
and
darn
then
it,
and then it
he's
just like it
insightful.
said,
Oh boy,
it said, "A
yeah,
gentleman
he
you
could be
have
Canadian.
named Sleepy John."
He
That was
could
my
be,
favorite
yeah.
part. It said Sleepy John, and it was in like
Yeah.
quotations. That was my favorite part. Was the quotations.
Can you put me in direct contact with them since they called me out by name?
I gave you guys I screen capped it and it has the email. What are you talking about? It's like
Can we get them on
charity.
for Nico
Shut up,
time, maybe?
JGZ, our friend of the podcast.
Nico
Yeah,
can
met
get
us in
him on,
person.
I think.
Who?
And then you can ask him about his charity scams.
No.
Although now
Why
that
would
I've
you
said
say
it,
something
I don't
like
think.
that?
I don't think we want to
The
do
Wait,
it.
are
man
you
is
being- are
doing
you-
good works for someone.
There's a
No, he's
30-page
for himself.
There's a 30-page thread
How
on the
do we know
CGC
this? You don't know
boards.
that? That's a lot of pages.
Yeah,
And they
read
all
through it
have,
all.
like,
You'll be your eyes.
There's
will
receipt.
I'd
Like
be
I thought
wide
about
open.
responding to his email and asking him about it, but I was like, no, there's no because like he was accused of shill bidding his own stuff, and he immediately refuted it and started like defending himself.
Mhm.
But then when
Yep.
he was accused of running like a fake charity, so he didn't have to pay eBay fees, he hasn't said anything, and that thread
Nope.
is still open and has been going for a while. So I mean,
And
who knows?
I didn't mean to bring it up at the time. I had it on the list, and then, like I said, it's recorded in GPA. It's a real sale, so you don't know when you look at GPA. You don't know what the reasoning for the pricing is, and so it was recorded, and it sets a price point, and that's all you can go by.
I hope they don't write me another email. I bet I get another email. Ugh.
Lord of mercy.
Well,
Emails are the worst.
I would like to.
Maybe you
exchange
shouldn't
emails at
say
least.
these mean things.
It's not mean. It's they've had their chance to
What?
prove themselves.
What did I say that was mean? Wait, what did I say
chosen
that
not
was
to.
mean? Okay, but what did I say that was mean? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
We'll just read
yeah,
comments. You guys are weirdos. No,
J-
we're not reading comments
I agree,
anymore.
but I don't.
I like the
that was-
comments. They make me happy.
Yeah, but like we
Jeezy,
also
that
have
was
an
my-
audio only thing, and you guys aren't reading the comments. You're just expecting everybody else to, and it hurts my feelings. We're ending the podcast now. I'll catch you guys next week.
I'm
We'll have
already
tons of stuff to talk
disappointed.
about. We could be doing Instagram videos where we pull out our hair and say that there's nothing to talk about, and we don't know what we're going to be putting in our mystery boxes, and we could be crying or whatever. I don't know, because there's no content, and if there's no content, we can't make our clickbait money,
Jeez,
right?
how did we go an hour without any content?
I don't know. All I know is like I got an email today that said I posted an article that like I wrote in January about the Easter Bunny. So
Nice.
that's something you should check out. 'cause
Oh,
I definitely,
yeah.
Remember I sent you that in like January. I don't remember it at all.
Crazy
But that-
ass one.
That definitely went live. So that's something to check
Hey,
out.
JGZ, you got the same info as me. That's why I can't verify it. I don't know. I don't know any other sources that have that. So
Okay.
Maybe
whatever.
we should start a
I'll,
Patreon.
No, we're not. No, shut up.
Oh.
We're like
Bad
this
joke.
is-
Bad joke. Bad joke.
Okay, we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks for watching.
I won't. We all will. We'll be
Yes.
here same place, same time. Thanks for watching or listening if you're
Sorry
on audio only.
for everything.